Ruth's voice, sharp with anger. We're too close. What if she really does have records? Gilbert, sounding worried. What if she's been documenting? Then we accelerate the incompetence petition. I've already called Dr. Lehman. He'll testify that she's showing signs of dementia, breaking into our home, making wild accusations. She didn't break in, Ruth. We invited her to dinner. She's clearly unstable. That's what matters. By the time we're done, no court will believe a word she says. My hands clenched into fists. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, to paint tonight's confrontation as evidence of my deteriorating mind. What about Jessica? Gilbert asked. She looked pretty shaken when Margaret left. Jessica will do what she's told. She always has. She's too weak to stand up to us, and she wants that house too badly to risk losing the down payment. They were so sure of themselves, so confident in their power over my daughter, over me, over everyone. I reached the top of the stairs and moved down the hallway, staying close to the wall where the floorboards were more stable and less likely to creak. Ruth's sanctuary room was at the end of the hall, the door slightly ajar. Please let it be unlocked, please. I pushed gently. The door opened soundlessly, revealing the room lit by moonlight streaming through the large window. The vanity with its collection of white diamonds perfume bottles gleamed like an altar to stolen moments. But I wasn't here for the perfume. The vanity had multiple small drawers, ornate brass handles catching what little light there was. I opened the first drawer: makeup, brushes, compacts. The second, jewelry, mostly costume pieces, tangled together. The third drawer was locked. Of course it was. The important things, the evidence of her crimes, would be protected. I looked around frantically for something to pry it open with. A letter opener on the vanity silver, probably expensive. I wedged it into the gap between the drawer and the frame, applying pressure carefully to avoid making noise. The lock was flimsy, ornamental rather than functional. After 30 seconds of careful pressure, something gave way with a soft crack. The drawer slid open. Inside was a small velvet jewelry box, navy blue, worn at the edges. I recognized it immediately. Richard and I had bought our wedding rings from a jeweler in downtown Phoenix, and they'd come in boxes exactly like this. My hands shook as I lifted it out. The weight was familiar, heartbreaking. I opened it. 2 rings sat nestled in the cream satin lining. Richard's wedding band. Gold, simple, with R+M forever engraved inside. And beside it, my ring. The one I'd removed from his finger myself after he died. The one I'd placed in his casket so he could be buried with a symbol of our love. Except he hadn't been buried with it. The funeral home must have given it to Ruth. She'd been there that day, I remembered now. She'd come to pay her respects, crying prettily, telling me what a privilege it had been to care for Richard in his final days. And she'd stolen my ring. Not just his, mine too. Both rings, both symbols of our marriage, our forever. Rage and grief collided in my chest with such force I couldn't breathe. I clutched the box to my chest, tears streaming silently down my face. What are you doing in my room? I spun around. Ruth stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, her silhouette sharp and menacing. She wore a silk robe expensive, probably $200, and her face was twisted with fury. Those are mine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Richard's ring. My ring. You stole them. I didn't steal anything. Richard gave them to me. And your ring, the funeral home gave it to me to return to you, but you were so distraught I decided to keep it safe until you were more stable. 22 years, Ruth. You've had them for 22 years. Get out of my house before I call the police. Call them, please. I'd love to explain to the police why you have my dead husband's wedding rings hidden in a locked drawer like trophies. Ruth's eyes narrowed. You broke into my home. That's a crime, Margaret. You're trespassing, and you're clearly mentally unstable, breaking in, making wild accusations, stealing from me. Stealing? I held up the jewelry box. These rings are mine. They were always mine. Can you prove that? Can you prove those specific rings belong to you and Richard? Gold bands look alike, Margaret. And I have documentation that Richard gave me gifts during his care. The hospital knows. It's in his file. My heart sank. She'd thought of everything. Even if I had the rings, she had paperwork, records, a trail of legitimacy for her theft. But here's what I'll do. Ruth continued, her voice dropping to something cold and calculating. "Give me back that box, leave my house quietly, and I'll forget this happened. We'll put it down to your declining mental state. Confusion, memory problems, poor judgment, all signs of dementia. No charges filed, no police report. You just need to understand that you're not well, Margaret, and you need help managing your affairs." She wanted the rings back, which meant they mattered, which meant they were evidence. "No," I said simply. "No, I'm keeping these, and I'm leaving. And if you try to stop me, if you file any charges, I'll tell everyone, the police, the courts, the newspapers, about your history at Banner Good Samaritan, about the disciplinary record, about the other families you've done this to." Ruth's face went white, then red. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Do you really want to risk it?" We stared at each other across the moonlit room, two women locked in a battle over a dead man's memory and the money he'd left behind. Finally, Ruth stepped aside from the doorway. "Get out, and don't ever come back." I walked past her, clutching the jewelry box like a lifeline, my heart racing so fast I thought I might collapse right there in her expensive hallway. But I made it down the stairs, through the house, out the back door I'd entered through. I didn't run. I couldn't. My 74-year-old legs wouldn't manage it, but I moved as quickly as I dared, expecting any moment to hear sirens, to feel hands grabbing me, to be arrested for burglary. I reached my car, climbed inside, locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly, it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. And then I was driving away, the jewelry box on the passenger seat, Richard's rings finally coming home. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I'd stolen back what was stolen from me. And tomorrow I'd use those rings as proof that Ruth Patterson was exactly what I claimed she was. A predator, a thief, a monster who fed on the dying and their families. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. But tonight, I had won a battle. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Not yet. Not with these rings burning like hot coals in my lap, not with Ruth's threats echoing in my ears, not with the adrenaline still coursing through my 74-year-old body like lightning. Instead, I drove to the only 24-hour place I could think of where a terrified elderly woman wouldn't look out of place at midnight, a Denny's on Indian School Road. The parking lot was half empty, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly and surreal. I sat in my Honda Civic for 15 minutes, just breathing, trying to slow my racing heart, staring at the navy velvet box on my passenger seat. Finally, I opened it again. The rings gleamed in the parking lot lights. Richard's band, solid and simple. My band, more delicate, with a small pattern of engraved flowers along the edge. I'd chosen that design because Richard used to bring me wildflowers when we were dating daisies, and black-eyed Susans picked from the side of the road, presented with such earnest sweetness that they meant more than any expensive bouquet. I slipped my ring onto my finger. It still fit perfectly, after all these years. The metal was cool against my skin, then slowly warmed to body temperature. It felt like Richard was holding my hand again. The tears came then, great, heaving sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for Richard, for the marriage we'd had that I'd thought was solid and true. I cried for the confused, morphine-addled man who'd given his wedding ring to a predatory nurse, thinking God knows what in his dying delirium. I cried for the 22 years I'd spent grieving a saint who'd been just a vulnerable, frightened human after all. And I cried for myself, the fool who'd been too desperate for family, too hungry for connection, too willing to be used. When the tears finally stopped, I felt hollow, empty, but also strangely clean, like a wound that had been lanced and drained of poison. I took my phone out and saw 17 missed calls. Jessica, Marcus, Gilbert, Ruth. Text messages stacked up like accusations. But there was also a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I pressed play. "Mrs. Bennett, this is Carlos Rodriguez from Walmart. I hope you're safe. I heard from my wife Maria, she works the night shift at Banner Good Samaritan in environmental services, that there was some kind of disturbance at a house in Arcadia tonight. Police were called for a possible break-in, but no charges filed. I'm worried it might involve you and the Patterson family. Please call me when you get this, anytime, day or night. You have my number now. You don't have to face this alone. A stranger cared more about my safety than my own daughter." The thought should have hurt, But I was beyond hurt now. I was in that cold, clear space beyond pain where everything becomes sharp and focused and simple. I needed evidence, real evidence, not just receipts and Instagram posts, but something that proved Ruth's predatory pattern, that showed her deliberate exploitation of Richard and now of me. And then I remembered. Ruth's bedroom. Our confrontation. She'd said things, damning things about Richard giving her gifts, about keeping my ring safe, about her documentation proving everything was legitimate. But what if I'd recorded it? My phone had been in my cardigan pocket the entire time. Had it captured audio through the fabric? With shaking hands, I opened my voice memo app. There was a recording there, timestamp showing it had started at 11:47 p.m. and ended at 11:53 p.m. 6 minutes. I'd accidentally triggered the recording when I'd pulled my phone out to use as a flashlight. I pressed play, holding the phone close to my ear. Static, fabric rustling, my own breathing, rapid and scared. Then faintly, "What are you doing in my room?" Ruth's voice, clear enough to identify. And then my own. "Those are mine. Richard's ring. My ring. You stole them." The entire confrontation was there. Ruth claiming Richard had given her the rings. Ruth threatening to call the police. Ruth admitting she'd had the rings for 22 years. Ruth offering to forget this happened if I agreed that I was mentally unstable and needed help managing my affairs. But it was what came at the end, what I hadn't realized I'd captured, that made my blood freeze. After I'd left the bedroom, the phone had still been recording in my pocket. I'd walked down the hallway, and as I'd passed the master bedroom, I'd heard voices. At the time, I'd been too frightened to register what they were saying, but the recording had captured it. Gilbert's voice, angry and stressed. "This is getting out of control, Ruth. She knows too much. Breaking in here, taking those rings, what if she goes to the police?" "Let her go to the police." Ruth's voice, cold and dismissive. "We'll show them she's delusional." An elderly woman breaking into her daughter's in-laws' home, stealing jewelry, making wild accusations about events from over 20 years ago. It'll just prove she needs a guardian. But what if Jessica doesn't back us up? What if she believes her mother? Jessica will do what I tell her. Ruth's voice was hard as stone. She's been doing exactly what I tell her for 4 years. She married Marcus because I told her to. She asks her mother for money when I tell her to. She plays the dutiful daughter while reporting everything Margaret says and does back to me. Jessica is mine, Gilbert. Margaret's own daughter is mine. A pause. Then Gilbert, "You're sure Margaret doesn't know about the beginning? About why we really targeted her family? How could she? It was 22 years ago. She was too busy playing the grieving widow to notice that her husband's night nurse was learning everything about their finances, their insurance policies, their family structure. By the time Richard died, I knew exactly how much that family was worth and exactly how to position Marcus to eventually access it. Through Jessica, who was conveniently 8 years old when her father died, too young to remember details, easy to manipulate later when we coincidentally introduced her to Marcus at that teaching conference. She thought it was fate. Ruth laughed, a sound like breaking glass. It was a 7-year plan, Gilbert, from Richard's death to Marcus meeting Jessica. And it's paid off beautifully. Over 67,000 so far, with another 50 about to come in. If Margaret doesn't ruin everything, she won't. She's old. She's alone. She's desperate for family connection. Even now, after everything, she won't risk losing Jessica completely. That's her weakness. She'll tolerate anything to keep some connection to her daughter. And if you're wrong, then we use the nuclear option. We tell Jessica that her perfect mother wasn't so perfect after all. That Richard gave me those rings because he loved me, because his marriage was dead long before the cancer killed him. That Margaret drove him into my arms with her coldness, her constant martyrdom, her exhausting neediness. Jessica will believe it. She'll choose us over her mother because she's already chosen us every time for 4 years. If this part really struck a chord with you, tap that like button to let me know you're with me. Do you see yourself in the character's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your take. The recording went silent then, just the sound of my footsteps moving away, my ragged breathing, the creak of the stairs as I'd fled. I sat in that Denny's parking lot, the phone in my trembling hand, and understood with perfect, horrible clarity what had been done to me. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This wasn't even garden variety elder abuse. This was a multi-decade conspiracy. A long game that had started the moment Ruth walked into Richard's hospital room and saw not a dying man but an opportunity. She'd studied us, learned our vulnerabilities, cataloged our assets. And when Richard died, she hadn't moved on to her next victim. She'd waited, planned, positioned her son to accidentally meet my daughter 7 years later. Everything Marcus and Jessica's chance meeting, their whirlwind romance, their marriage, their constant financial crises, all of it had been orchestrated from the beginning. Jessica hadn't just been complicit in my exploitation for 4 years. She'd been groomed for 7 years before that to be the perfect access point to my money. My daughter was as much a victim as I was, a victim who'd been turned into a weapon against her own mother. The rage that filled me then was unlike anything I'd ever felt. Not hot anger, but cold fury, surgical, precise. Ruth thought she'd won. She thought I was too weak, too old, too desperate for love to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I started the car and drove not to my apartment, but to a 24-hour FedEx office location. I needed copies of this recording. Multiple copies, stored in multiple places, impossible to lose or destroy. The young man working the night shift looked concerned when I walked in a 74-year-old woman at 1 a.m, dried blood on her shin, eyes red from crying, hands shaking. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" "I need to upload a file to multiple cloud services," I said, my voice steady despite everything. "And I need to make several copies on USB drives. Can you help me with that?" "Sure, but..." "I'm being robbed by my family," I said simply. "This recording proves it. I need to make sure they can't destroy the evidence. Can you help me?" His expression shifted from concern to determination. "Absolutely. Let's get you set up." His name was Tyler. He was 23 years old, working night shift to pay for community college, studying criminal justice. And for the next hour, he helped me upload Ruth's confession to Google Drive, Dropbox, and iCloud. He made 5 copies on USB drives. He even helped me email the recording to myself at 3 different email addresses. "My grandmother got scammed by her nephew," Tyler said quietly as he worked. "Took almost everything she had before my mom figured it out. We got some of the money back through the courts, but Grandma was never the same after. The betrayal hurt worse than the theft." "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, exactly." When we finished, Tyler refused to let me pay the $47 for the services. "On the house," he said firmly, and here he wrote something on a business card. "This is my mom's number. She's a victim advocate with the Phoenix Police Department. She helps elderly people who've been financially abused. She's good at navigating the system, getting protective orders, all of that. Tell her Tyler sent you." I took the card with hands that finally weren't shaking. "Thank you. You've been so kind." "Give them hell, ma'am," Tyler said with a small smile. "Whatever they did to you, make them pay for it." I drove to my apartment as dawn was breaking over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Richard had loved. I climbed the stairs to my studio, unlocked the door, and stood in my poverty-stricken home with new eyes. This wasn't where I'd end up. This wasn't my fate. I had evidence now. Proof of conspiracy, of deliberate exploitation spanning 2 decades, of manipulation so calculated it took my breath away. And I had something else, righteous fury. Ruth Patterson had stolen my husband's dying moments, corrupted my daughter, and robbed me of $67,000. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She'd underestimated me. The war wasn't coming. The war had already begun. And I wasn't going to lose. I called Mr. Weber's emergency line at 6 a.m. "I have something you need to hear," I said when he answered. A confession. Ruth Patterson admitting the entire conspiracy on tape, including that she targeted my family starting 22 years ago, that she positioned her son to marry my daughter specifically to access my money, and that she's been manipulating Jessica for over a decade. Silence. Then, "Mrs. Bennett, are you telling me you have recorded evidence of premeditated, long-term conspiracy to commit elder fraud?" "Yes, and evidence that my daughter has been groomed to participate. I think Jessica might also be a victim." "Where are you right now?" "My apartment. Safe. The recording is backed up in multiple locations. They can't destroy it." "Good. Very good. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming to you. We need to plan our next move very carefully, because what you've just handed me, Mrs. Bennett, this isn't just elder abuse anymore. This is organized fraud, criminal conspiracy. We're talking serious prison time. I looked at Richard's ring on my finger, the one I'd stolen back from the woman who'd stolen everything from me. Good, I said. Let them pay. Let them all pay. Outside my window, the sun rose on a new day. The day I stopped being a victim and became a fighter. Mr. Weber arrived at my apartment at 7:15 a.m., carrying a leather briefcase and 2 cups of coffee from a nearby Starbucks. He was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had probably seen too many stories like mine. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, handing me one of the coffees. "You look like you've been through hell." I almost laughed. Hell would have been easier. Hell had rules, boundaries, a clear enemy. What I'd been through was something worse, a betrayal so complete, so calculated, that it had rewritten my entire understanding of the past 22 years. We sat at my small kitchen table, and I played him the recording. All 6 minutes of it, plus the damning conversation I'd accidentally captured as I'd fled Ruth's bedroom. Mr. Weber listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When Ruth's voice said, "Jessica is mine, Gilbert. Margaret's own daughter is mine," he closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. When the recording ended, he was silent for a long moment. "Mrs. Bennett, do you understand what you have here? Evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. More than that. You have evidence of grooming. Long-term psychological manipulation of a minor that continued into adulthood. Your daughter was 8 years old when her father died. Ruth spent the next 7 years positioning her son to accidentally meet Jessica. That's not opportunistic crime. That's predatory behavior on a scale I've rarely seen. I gripped my coffee cup so hard I was surprised it didn't shatter. Jessica said on the recording that she's been following Ruth's orders for 4 years, asking me for money when Ruth tells her to, reporting everything I say and do. But? Mr. Weber prompted gently. But Ruth also said Jessica was groomed. That she thinks their meeting was fate, not planning. That she doesn't know about the beginning. I looked up at him, desperate for him to confirm what I was hoping. Does that mean Jessica doesn't know? Doesn't know that Ruth targeted our family from the start? That Marcus was positioned to meet her? That this whole marriage was engineered? Mr. Weber leaned back in his chair, considering. Based on what I heard on that recording, I'd say your daughter knows she's been lying to you about money. She knows she's been complicit in the financial exploitation for the past 4 years. But does she know she was groomed from age 8? Does she know her entire relationship with Marcus was manufactured as a long-term con? That evidence suggests no. She doesn't know. Relief and horror warred in my chest. Relief that Jessica might not be the monster I'd feared. Horror at what had been done to her. Ruth said she'll tell Jessica that Richard loved her, that he gave her the rings because his marriage was dead, I said, my voice shaking. She's planning to use that to turn Jessica against me completely if I don't back down. Which is exactly why we need to move fast. Mr. Weber pulled papers from his briefcase. Here's what I'm proposing. We file for an emergency protective order today, not just against Ruth and Gilbert, but against Marcus as well. We submit your evidence, including this recording. We get you immediate legal protection. What about Jessica? That's more complicated. She's an adult. She's participated in defrauding you, even if she was manipulated into it. The district attorney will have to decide whether to charge her or offer her immunity in exchange for testimony against the others. I don't want her charged, I said immediately. She's my daughter. She's been manipulated. Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Weber's voice was firm but not unkind. I understand. But here's the reality. Jessica has been lying to you, asking you for money under false pretenses, and reporting your activities to your abusers for 4 years. She's 32 years old. At some point, even if she was groomed as a teenager, she became responsible for her own choices as an adult. But Ruth said a lot of things, but words and actions are different. Whatever Jessica knows or doesn't know about the original conspiracy, she knows she's been lying to you about money for 4 years. She knows Ruth and Gilbert aren't really struggling. She had to know. The words hit me like physical blows. Because he was right. Jessica had been in that house, eating those expensive meals, seeing that luxury lifestyle. She'd asked me for $800 for Ruth's heart medication and then gone to Mastro's for dinner. She'd claimed they couldn't afford groceries and then posted Instagram photos with champagne. She knew. On some level, she had to know. "I need to talk to her," I said. "Before you file anything, I need to hear it from her. Mrs. Bennett, I strongly advise against. She's my daughter. She's the only family I have left. If there's any chance she's been as victimized as I have, if there's any chance she can be saved from these people, I have to try." Mr. Weber studied me for a long moment. "What if she chooses them over you? What if she knew everything all along and you've been fooling yourself about her innocence?" "Then at least I'll know," I said quietly. "At least I'll know the truth before this goes to court." He didn't look happy about it, but he nodded. "Okay, but you don't do this alone. I'll be there with you. And we do it in a public place, somewhere safe, where they can't intimidate you or manipulate you." "Where?" "Here, your apartment. I'll be in the bedroom with the door cracked. I'll hear everything. If at any point I think you're in danger, emotional or physical, I'm intervening. Agreed?" "Agreed. And Mrs. Bennett, you need to understand something. No matter what happens in this conversation, no matter what Jessica says or how she explains her actions, the legal process is moving forward. Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus will be held accountable. The only question is whether Jessica faces charges too, or whether she cooperates and potentially gets immunity. This conversation might determine which path she takes." I understood. This wasn't just a mother trying to reconnect with her daughter. This was a victim confronting her abuser's accomplice, even if that accomplice was my own child. I texted Jessica at 7:45 a.m. "We need to talk, just you and me. Come to my apartment at 9 a.m. Come alone or don't come at all." The response came back within seconds. "Mom, yes, please. I'll be there. Just me. I promise." The next hour and 15 minutes were the longest of my life. Mr. Weber set up his laptop in my bedroom, positioned to record audio and video of the entire conversation. He gave me a small panic button, a device that would alert his phone if I pressed it, and made me practice using it 3 times. "If she threatens you, if she tries to gaslight you, if at any point you feel unsafe, you press that button. I'll be through that door in 2 seconds." At 8:57, a car pulled into the parking lot. I watched from my window as Jessica got out of her Toyota Camry, alone as promised. She looked terrible, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. She looked younger than 32, vulnerable, scared. She looked like my little girl. "Don't," I told myself. "Don't let that sway you. She's been lying to you for 4 years. She's been reporting your every move to your abusers. She's been part of this." But my heart ached anyway. The knock came at 9 a.m. exactly, 3 soft raps, hesitant. I opened the door. Jessica stood there, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Mom," she whispered, and the single word held so much pain it nearly broke me. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She entered slowly, looking around my studio apartment as if seeing it for the first time. Her eyes took in the sagging furniture, the stained carpet, the bare walls, the evidence of my poverty. Something shifted in her expression. Shame, maybe. Or horror. Or both. "Sit down, Jessica." She sat on my ancient sofa, and I took the chair across from her. The coffee table between us felt like an ocean. For a long moment, we just looked at each other, my daughter and me. The child I'd raised alone after Richard died, working 3 jobs to give her a good life. The young woman who'd gone to college on scholarships I'd supplemented with my retirement savings. The bride I'd watched marry Marcus 4 years ago, glowing with happiness I'd thought was real. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Jessica began, tears already streaming down her face. "I didn't know it had gotten this bad. I didn't know you'd given us that much money." I thought, "You thought what exactly?" I kept my voice level. "You thought the $67,100 I've given you over 4 years was what? Pocket change?" She flinched. "I didn't know it was that much. Ruth always said you had plenty, that you were just being modest, that you wanted to help but didn't want us to feel like we owed you. She said the money came from investments, from accounts you barely touched." "I live in a studio apartment with a leaking ceiling," I interrupted. "I eat ramen noodles for dinner. I walk 3 miles in 100-degree heat to save bus fare. Did you think I was doing that for fun, Jessica?" "I didn't know." Her voice rose, defensive and desperate. "You never told me how bad things were. You always said you were fine, that you were managing, that you wanted to help because family helps family. And you never asked. You never visited. You never saw this place, never saw how I actually live. Because if you had, you'd have known that every dollar I gave you was a dollar I took from myself." She was sobbing now, full-body sobs that shook her entire frame. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have known. I should have." "Should have what? Stopped lying about emergencies? Stopped calling me crying about rent you weren't actually behind on? Stopped asking for money for Ruth's medical bills when Ruth was posting Instagram photos of spa days?" Jessica's head snapped up. "You know about the Instagram?" "I know about everything, Jessica. The receipts, the Escalade, the expensive dinners and designer purchases. The fact that Ruth was Richard's night nurse and took his wedding ring. The fact that she's been systematically defrauding me for 4 years with your help." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Jessica whispered. "When Ruth first suggested I call you for help with rent, she said it was just temporary. She said they were really struggling, that they just needed a few months to get back on their feet, and you seemed so happy to help, Mom. You seemed like you wanted to be needed." The words struck deep because they were partially true. I had wanted to be needed. I'd been so lonely, so desperate for connection, that being able to help had felt like purpose. "And then?" I prompted. "And then it kept happening. Another emergency, another crisis, and every time, Ruth had a reason why they needed help, why they couldn't manage on their own. And she'd tell me exactly what to say to you, how to ask, when to call," she said. Jessica's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She said if I did this, if I helped get her family through this rough patch, she'd treat me like a real daughter. Not like a daughter-in-law, but like her actual daughter. There it was. The hook. The manipulation. Ruth had found Jessica's deepest wound growing up without a father, watching other kids have 2 parents, always feeling like something was missing, and she'd exploited it ruthlessly. "She told me she'd love me like you love me," Jessica continued, tears streaming freely now. "That I could have a complete family again. A mom, a dad, a husband. The family I'd always wanted since Dad died." My heart cracked. "Baby, you always had a family. You had me." "I know." The words came out as a wail. "I know, Mom, and I'm so sorry." But she made it sound like I could have both. Like I could have you and them, and we'd all be this big, happy family. And I wanted that so badly. I wanted... She couldn't finish. She was crying too hard, her whole body shaking with the force of her grief and guilt. I wanted to go to her. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to cross that space, to hold my daughter, to comfort her. But I stayed in my chair. "Jessica, I need you to answer a question, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth. Can you do that?" She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Did you know Marcus was positioned to meet you? Did you know Ruth planned your whole relationship from the beginning?" The confusion on her face looked genuine. "What? No. We met at that teaching conference in Tucson. It was random. We were both in line for coffee, started talking about our jobs. Ruth worked with the conference organizers," I said quietly. "She knew you'd be there. She made sure Marcus was there too, at exactly the right time, with exactly the right opening line about teaching." Jessica's face went white. "That's not possible. That would mean my whole marriage is a lie. That would mean Marcus never really loved me, that he was just..." She stopped, the realization hitting her like a freight train. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Mom, what have I done?" "You've been manipulated," I said. "But you've also been complicit. Both things can be true, Jessica." She looked at me with her father's eyes, Richard's eyes green and desperate and filled with shame. "What do I do now?" she asked. "How do I fix this?" "You tell me everything," I said. "Every lie Ruth told you to tell me, every dollar you asked for and what it was really used for, every time you reported back to Ruth about what I said or did. You tell me everything, and then you help me make sure they never do this to anyone else again. And then..." Her voice was small, childlike. "After I tell you everything, will you forgive me?" I looked at my daughter, my betrayer, my victim, my child, and knew the answer would determine both our futures. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I know we have to start with the truth, all of it. Can you do that?" Jessica took a shuddering breath, wiped her eyes one more time, and nodded. "Okay, Mom, I'll tell you everything. And in my bedroom, Mr. Weber's recording equipment captured every word. Jessica sat on my worn sofa, her hands twisted together in her lap, and began to speak. Her voice was hollow, mechanical, as if she were reading from a script she'd memorized but never truly understood. "It started 6 months after Marcus and I got married," she said. "We'd moved into that rental in Chandler. Ruth called me one afternoon crying. She said Gilbert had lost his job, that they were 3 months behind on rent, that they were going to lose their house. She begged me not to tell Marcus, because he'd be devastated, because he looked up to his father so much. I said nothing, just listened. In my peripheral vision, I could see the bedroom door was cracked open exactly 3 inches. Mr. Weber was there, recording everything. She said they needed $1,500 by the end of the week or they'd be evicted. And she said you had money set aside, that you'd mentioned wanting to help us get settled, that you'd be happy to contribute if only someone asked." Jessica looked up at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. "She made it sound like you wanted to help but didn't know how to offer. Like I'd be doing you a favor by letting you be generous. So you called me. I called you, and you were so happy, Mom. You were so excited that I needed you, that you could help. You sent $2,000 and told me to keep the extra as a cushion. Do you remember?" I remembered. I'd felt needed, valuable, like a good mother. I'd withdrawn the money from my retirement account and felt virtuous doing it. "When did you find out it was a lie?" Jessica's face crumpled. 2 weeks later, I went to their house to thank them for not telling Marcus about the crisis, to tell them the rent was paid and everything was okay, and Ruth was wearing a new dress. Designer, with the tag still on it. $700. I saw the receipt on the counter. "What did you do?" I confronted her. I said, "I thought you were broke. I thought you couldn't pay rent." And she just smiled at me, like I was a child who'd said something naive and amusing. Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. She said, "Oh, honey, we're fine. We've always been fine. But your mother has more money than she needs, and she's sitting on it doing nothing while young people like you and Marcus struggle. I'm just helping redistribute resources to where they're needed most." I felt my fingernails digging into the arms of my chair, and you didn't tell me. I should have. I know I should have. But Ruth said. Jessica took a shaky breath. She said if I told you, it would destroy our relationship. She said you'd think I was ungrateful, that I was accusing you of not wanting to help your own daughter. She said you'd feel betrayed that I'd questioned your judgment about who deserved your money. She twisted it so that telling you the truth would make me the bad guy. Classic manipulation. Isolate the victim, make them doubt their own perceptions, make honesty seem like betrayal. And then it kept happening. Every few weeks, Ruth would call with a new crisis. Marcus's car needed repairs, actually. They wanted to upgrade to a newer model. Gilbert needed surgery, actually. They wanted to remodel the kitchen. I had a miscarriage and needed medical care. Jessica's voice broke completely. That one was real, Mom. I really did have a miscarriage. But Ruth told me to ask you for $3,000 for medical bills when the actual cost was $800. She kept the difference. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. You had a miscarriage? When? 18 months ago. I was only 6 weeks along. I didn't tell you because Ruth said it would upset you, that you'd worry, that it was better to keep it private. But when I needed money for the bills, she told me exactly what to say to make you send more than I actually needed. My daughter had lost a pregnancy my grandchild and I hadn't known, hadn't been there to comfort her, because Ruth had used even that tragedy as an opportunity to steal from me. How much did you actually need versus how much did you ask for? Jessica pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened a notes app. I've been keeping track. I started writing it down about a year ago because I was losing track of what was real and what wasn't. She read from her list, her voice mechanical. March 2024. Asked for $800 for Ruth's heart medication. Actual cost, 0. She doesn't take heart medication. You sent $900. February 2024. Asked for $1,200 for Marcus's car transmission. Actual cost, 0. The car was fine. You sent $1,500. January 2024. Asked for $600 for the electric bill. Actual cost, $140. You sent $700. December 2023. Asked for $2,000 for Christmas gifts and food. Actual spent, maybe $400. You sent $2,500. She continued reading, month after month, emergency after emergency. The list went back 4 years. With each entry, the gap between what they'd actually needed and what I'd sent grew wider. By the time she finished, we'd calculated that of the $67,000 I'd given them, maybe $8,000 had gone to legitimate expenses. The rest, nearly $60,000, had been pure theft. Did Marcus know? I asked, my voice cold. Did your husband know you were lying to me? Jessica's silence was answer enough. He knew, she finally whispered. He knew from the beginning. It was his idea to ask you for help with our wedding, to get you invested in our marriage early. Ruth taught him how to do it. She said she'd done the same thing with other families, that it was about building dependency and obligation slowly. Other families. The word settled in my stomach like lead. You knew Ruth had done this before? I didn't know details. Just that she had experience managing family finances and helping older relatives understand their resources. She made it sound legitimate, Mom. Like financial planning, not theft. And when did you realize it wasn't legitimate? Jessica was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I think I always knew. I just didn't want to admit it. There it was. The truth beneath all the rationalizations and excuses Jessica had known. Maybe not the full extent of the conspiracy, maybe not about Ruth targeting our family from the moment Richard died, but she'd known she was lying to me. She'd known I was suffering so they could live in luxury. Why? The question came out as a sob. Why would you do this to me? I'm your mother. I raised you alone. I sacrificed everything for you. Why? Because I was selfish, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. Because I wanted the house and the nice things and the Instagram perfect life. Because Ruth made me believe I deserved it, that you had so much and I had so little, that it was fair to take from you because you'd had your turn and now it was mine. I had nothing, I said, my voice breaking. I had nothing and you took even that. I know. God, Mom, I know. And I hate myself for it. Every single day for the past year I've hated myself. But I didn't know how to stop. Ruth said if I stopped, if I told you the truth, she'd tell you things about Dad. Things from when he was dying. She said she'd destroy your memory of him, that she'd make sure you knew he'd loved her, not you. So Ruth had been blackmailing Jessica too, using my dead husband as a weapon against both of us. What exactly did she tell you about your father? Jessica's face went pale. She said Dad gave her his wedding ring, that he told her he'd made a mistake marrying you, that his life with you had been a disappointment. She said he called her name when he was dying, not yours. She showed me Instagram posts from July 2003, pictures of flowers he gave her, the ring on her finger. She said if I didn't cooperate, she'd make sure everyone knew that Dad's last thoughts were of her. And you believed her? I didn't want to believe her. But she had the ring, Mom. She had photos, posts, evidence, and I was 8 when Dad died. I don't remember much about that time, so I couldn't prove she was lying. Your father was confused and dying and pumped full of morphine, I said, my voice hard. Ruth was a predatory nurse who exploited vulnerable patients. She was fired for it. There's a disciplinary record from Banner Good Samaritan documenting her pattern of manipulation and theft from dying men. Your father didn't love her. He was her victim. Jessica's expression shifted from guilt to horror. There's a record? An official record? Yes, and I have it, along with recordings of Ruth admitting that she targeted our family from the moment your father died, that she positioned Marcus to meet you 7 years later, that your entire marriage was engineered to give them access to my money. Jessica stood up abruptly, her hand over her mouth. I'm going to be sick. She ran to my tiny bathroom. I heard her retching, the sound of dry heaves, because she probably hadn't eaten anything today. When she came back out, her face was gray. My whole life is a lie, she said. Marcus never loved me. His family never cared about me. I was just a tool to get to you. Yes. The single word landed like a death sentence. Jessica sank back onto the sofa, her body curling in on itself. What do I do? How do I even begin to fix this? You testify, I said. You tell the police and the courts everything you just told me. You help me make sure Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus go to prison for what they've done. Prison? Jessica's voice was hollow. Marcus will go to prison. Yes. My husband. The man I thought I loved. The father of the baby I lost. A man who married you as part of a long-term fraud scheme. A man who knew his mother had exploited your dying father and decided to exploit you and me as well. Jessica was silent for a long time. Then, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. But Mom, after this is over, after they're in prison and the money is recovered, will you be able to look at me without seeing what I did to you? I looked at my daughter, my betrayer, my victim, the child I'd raised who'd become someone I didn't recognize. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now I can barely look at you without feeling sick, but you're still my daughter. And some part of me wants to believe you were manipulated more than you were malicious. I was both, Jessica said quietly. I was manipulated, and I was malicious. Both things are true. She was right. Both things were true, and I didn't know if I could forgive that. The question isn't whether I can forgive you, I said finally. The question is whether you can forgive yourself, and whether you're willing to do whatever it takes to make this right, even if it destroys your marriage and sends your husband to prison. Jessica took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and nodded. I'll do it. I'll testify. I'll help you. And Mom? Yes? I know you might never forgive me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know, even though I lied to you, even though I stole from you, even though I let them manipulate me into betraying you, I do love you. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it. The words should have comforted me. They didn't. Because love without action is just a word, and Jessica's actions had spoken far louder than any declaration of affection ever could. In the bedroom, I heard movement. Mr. Weber had what he needed. And tomorrow, we would go to war. Mr. Weber emerged from the bedroom 15 minutes after Jessica left. She'd stumbled out of my apartment like a woman in shock, which I suppose she was. Her entire reality had been dismantled in the space of an hour, her marriage revealed as a lie, her in-laws exposed as predators, her own complicity laid bare in her own words. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, only exhaustion. Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Weber said, setting his laptop on my kitchen table. What your daughter just gave us is prosecutorial gold. A full confession from a co-conspirator who's willing to testify against the primary perpetrators. The district attorney is going to love this. She's going to testify against her own husband. Her husband who married her as part of a fraud scheme. Mr. Weber's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Bennett, I know this is your daughter. I know you want to protect her. But Jessica made choices. Yes, she was groomed and manipulated, but she was also an adult who knew she was lying to you and continued doing it for 4 years. I know. The words came out flat, emotionless. I had no feelings left. They'd all been burned away in the past 12 hours. The question now is, do you want to pursue charges against Jessica, or do you want her to receive immunity in exchange for cooperation? I thought about Jessica at 8 years old, sobbing at her father's funeral. I thought about working 3 jobs to send her to college. I thought about the pride I'd felt watching her become a teacher, following in my footsteps. Then I thought about her laughing at Mastro's while I ate ramen. I thought about her asking for $3,000 for a miscarriage while pocketing the difference. I thought about her reporting my every word back to Ruth for 4 years. Immunity, I said finally. But she has to testify. She has to help us put Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus in prison, and she has to repay every dollar she personally received from the fraud. That's more than fair. The district attorney will agree to those terms. Mr. Weber pulled up a document on his laptop. Now, let's talk about the emergency protective order. I'm filing this morning. It will prohibit Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus from contacting you, coming within 300 feet of you, or accessing any of your financial accounts. What about Jessica? Jessica too, initially. Until the cooperation agreement is finalized, we need to restrict her access to you as well. Once she's officially cooperating with the prosecution, we can modify the order. The thought of being legally separated from my daughter should have hurt more than it did, but I was numb. There's something else we need to discuss, Mr. Weber continued. The recording you made in Ruth's house, you obtained it without her knowledge while trespassing on her property. That creates some legal complications. My stomach dropped. Is it inadmissible? Not necessarily. Arizona is a one-party consent state for recordings, which means you only need one person's consent to record a conversation, and you can consent to recording yourself. The problem is the trespassing. A defense attorney could argue the recording was obtained illegally and should be excluded from evidence. So everything I risked breaking into that house, stealing back the rings, recording her confession it might not even be usable? I didn't say that. Mr. Weber smiled grimly. I said it creates complications. But here's the thing. Even if a criminal court excludes the recording, it's still admissible in civil proceedings. And more importantly, Ruth doesn't know you have it, which gives us leverage. What kind of leverage? The kind where we offer her a choice. Cooperate fully, return all the money, and potentially avoid jail time or fight us, and have that recording played for a judge, jury, and the public. Ruth strikes me as someone who cares deeply about her reputation and her lifestyle. The threat of exposure might be enough to get her to fold. You think she'll just give up? Give back the money? And accept whatever punishment comes? No, Mr. Weber said. I think she'll fight like hell at first. But when she realizes we have evidence of a 22-year conspiracy, evidence of her prior disciplinary actions at the hospital, evidence of her admitting the entire scheme on tape, and a cooperating witness in Jessica, she'll realize she can't win. And Ruth Patterson is a survivor. Survivors know when to cut their losses. I wasn't so sure. The Ruth I'd met in that perfume-drenched bedroom hadn't seemed like someone who accepted defeat gracefully. She'd seemed like someone who would burn everything down rather than admit she'd lost. But I kept that thought to myself. What happens next? I asked. Today, we file the protective order. Tomorrow, we meet with Detective Sarah O'Connor at Phoenix Police Department. She's a specialist in elder abuse and financial crimes. She'll take your statement, review the evidence, and likely file criminal charges against Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus within 48 hours. That fast? When you have this much evidence? Yes. Most elder abuse cases take months to build because the victims don't have documentation and the perpetrators have covered their tracks. You've handed us a case with receipts, recordings, bank statements, and a cooperating witness. This is about as open and shut as these cases get. And then the district attorney decides what charges to file. Based on what we have, I'm anticipating multiple counts of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly identity theft if they accessed your accounts without authorization, and potentially racketeering charges, given the organized nature of the scheme. How long would they go to prison? Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a Class 2 felony in Arizona. That alone carries 2 to 12.5 years. Multiply that by multiple counts, add conspiracy charges, and we're looking at potentially 20 to 30 years if they're convicted on all counts. 20 to 30 years. Ruth would be in her 80s or 90s when she got out. Gilbert might die in prison. Marcus would lose his entire life. And Jessica would testify to make that happen. Mrs. Bennett, I need you to understand something. Mr. Weber's voice pulled me from my thoughts. This is going to get ugly. Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus aren't going to accept these charges quietly. They're going to fight back. They're going to attack your credibility, your mental competence, your motives. They're going to claim you're a bitter, confused old woman seeking revenge for imagined slights. Let them. They're also going to claim that Richard really did love Ruth, that their relationship was real, that she has every right to keep those rings because he gave them to her willingly. That one hurt. The thought of sitting in a courtroom while Ruth's lawyer painted my dying husband as an unfaithful man who'd fallen in love with his nurse, it made my chest constrict with anticipated pain. I know, I whispered, but I have the disciplinary record. I have proof that she did this to other patients, that it was her pattern. That has to count for something. It does, but Mrs. Bennett, even with all our evidence, even with Jessica's testimony, this could take years to fully resolve. Criminal trials, civil suits to recover the money, appeals, you're looking at potentially 3 to 5 years of legal battles. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I was 74 years old. I'd spent the last 4 years being systematically drained of my savings and my dignity. Did I have the strength for 3 to 5 more years of fighting? I thought about Richard's ring on my finger. I thought about the 22 years Ruth had kept it hidden like a trophy. I thought about Jessica at 8 years old, already being targeted by a predator who saw my grief-stricken family as an opportunity. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. Then we begin. Mr. Weber pulled out a stack of forms. First, I need you to sign these authorization forms, allowing me to request your complete financial records from all your banks. We need to document every transaction, every withdrawal, every transfer to the Patterson family. I signed. Next, I need authorization to subpoena records from Marcus and Jessica's bank accounts, credit card statements, and mortgage applications. We need to prove they had undisclosed income from you. I signed. Finally, I need authorization to file on your behalf with the Arizona Attorney General's Office, the FBI's Elder Justice Initiative, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This isn't just a local crime anymore, this is interstate fraud with federal implications. The FBI? My hand paused over the signature line. Ruth Patterson systematically exploited terminally ill patients and their families for over 20 years. She crossed state lines. Your sister Diana in Chicago can testify to conversations about the fraud. She used mail and electronic communications to facilitate the scheme. This meets the federal definition of wire fraud and conspiracy. The FBI will want this case. I signed the final form. Mr. Weber gathered the documents, his expression satisfied. Mrs. Bennett, when I took this case this morning, I thought it was a straightforward elder abuse situation. But what you've uncovered is something much larger. This is organized crime. Multi-generational conspiracy. The kind of case that makes careers and sets precedents. I don't care about precedents, I said quietly. I care about justice. For Richard. For me. For Jessica, even though she doesn't deserve it. And for all the other families Ruth destroyed before she got to us. You'll get it, I promise you that. After Mr. Weber left, I sat alone in my studio apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my poverty and their theft. The protective order would be filed within hours. By tomorrow morning, Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus would be served with legal papers that would shatter their world. They thought they'd won. They thought I was too weak, too old, too desperate for family connection to fight back. They'd underestimated me. But more than that, they'd underestimated the power of a mother's love, even love that had been betrayed, manipulated, and exploited. Because I wasn't doing this just for me. I was doing this for every elderly person who'd been victimized by their own family, every widow who'd been preyed upon in their grief, every parent who'd sacrificed everything only to be treated as an ATM. I was 74 years old, living in a studio apartment with a leaking ceiling. But I was also Margaret Louise Bennett, teacher, widow, mother, survivor, and I was taking my life back, one legal filing at a time. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Mom, I meant what I said. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I love you. I stared at those 3 words, I love you, and felt nothing. Maybe someday, after years of therapy and repentance and rebuilding, those words would mean something again. But not today. Today, love was just another word that had been stolen from me. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of stealing it back. After Mr. Weber left, I sat in my kitchen chair and stared at the wall for what might have been minutes or hours. Time had lost meaning. The afternoon sun moved across my single window, casting long shadows that stretched and disappeared, and still I, Saturday, 74 years old. That's how long I'd been alive. And in all those years, I'd never felt as simultaneously empty and full as I did in this moment. Empty of hope. Full of rage. Empty of love, full of evidence. Empty of family, full of righteous fury. I should eat something. That's what a rational person would do. But the thought of food made my stomach revolt. Instead, I opened my laptop, that ancient, wheezing Dell, and did something I'd been avoiding. I calculated the exact total of everything I'd lost. Not just the money I'd given them directly. Everything. I opened a spreadsheet and began typing, my arthritic fingers moving slowly across the keys. Direct transfers to Marcus and Jessica. Rent payments over 48 months, $24,000. Car repairs fabricated, $3,500. Medical emergencies, mostly fabricated, $12,200. Furniture and household items, $4,800. Wedding gift, $5,000. Christmas and birthday gifts, 4 years, $6,300. Emergency loans, never repaid, $8,400. Jessica's miscarriage medical bills, $2,900. Subtotal, $67,100. But that was just the beginning. Opportunity costs. The money I had withdrawn early from my 401k retirement account, paying penalties and taxes, $14,750 in penalties alone. The apartment I couldn't afford to move out of because I depleted my savings, $800 per month. Difference between my current rent and a decent one-bedroom for 4 years equals $38,400. $100 in quality of life I had lost. The medical care I'd delayed or skipped entirely. Prescription medications I'd stretched or gone without, $4,200. Dental work I'd postponed, now requiring more extensive repairs, $6,800. New glasses I'd needed for 3 years, $450. Physical therapy for my chronic back pain, $3,200. The car repairs I'd put off on my 15-year-old Honda, which finally died last year, forcing me to use public transportation, $8,000 in repairs that would have extended its life, plus the inconvenience and danger of being carless. The home repairs I couldn't afford. Leaking ceiling causing mold and respiratory issues, $3,200 to fix properly. Broken heater requiring me to use space heaters, $1,800. Plumbing issues in bathroom, $950. Emotional and physical costs. Doctor visits for stress-related health issues over 4 years. High blood pressure medication, $2,880. Anxiety medication, $1,920. Emergency room visit for suspected heart attack, actually severe anxiety, $3,400 after insurance. Therapy sessions I attended before I couldn't afford them anymore, $2,400. The things I gave up. A trip to Chicago to visit my sister Diana. Hadn't seen her in 6 years because I couldn't afford the plane ticket. A new winter coat. Mine is 12 years old with a broken zipper. Safety pin. Shutty. $180. Birthday dinners with former teacher colleagues. Declined all invitations because I couldn't afford to split the bill. Priceless social connections lost. The adult education watercolor painting class at the community center that I'd wanted to take, $240 per semester for 4 years, equals $1,920. A proper bed frame and mattress. I've been sleeping on a 20-year-old mattress that causes back pain, requiring medication, $1,200. When I finished, the spreadsheet showed a number that made my hands shake. Total financial impact, $174,040. $174,040. That's what this family had cost me when you added up not just what they'd stolen directly, but what their theft had forced me to sacrifice, postpone, or go without. $174,000 representing 4 years of suffering, poverty, pain, and loss. I stared at that number until it blurred. Then I added one final category, non-monetary losses. My daughter's integrity, corrupted. My trust in family, destroyed. My husband's memory, tainted. My golden years, stolen. My dignity, shattered. My peace of mind, obliterated. 4 years of my life I'll never get back, irreplaceable. Value, incalculable. I saved the spreadsheet, printed it, and added it to my evidence folder. Mr. Weber would want to see this. The district attorney would want to see this. A jury would want to see this. But more than that, I needed to see it. I needed the stark, mathematical proof that what had been done to me wasn't just unethical or unkind, it was catastrophic. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Margaret Bennett? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. Mrs. Bennett. My name is Detective Sarah O'Connor with the Phoenix Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Your attorney David Weber contacted me this morning about your case. I understand you've experienced significant financial exploitation by family members. The word significant almost made me laugh. Significant. Like it was just a noteworthy event. Not the complete destruction of my life. Yes, I managed. Significant would be one way to describe it. Mrs. Bennett, I've reviewed the preliminary evidence Mr. Weber sent over, the recordings, the receipts, the bank statements. I have to tell you, in my 15 years working financial crimes, I've never seen a case this well documented by a victim. Most people don't realize they're being exploited until it's too late and the evidence is gone, but you collected everything. I had help. A grocery store cashier named Carlos Rodriguez. He witnessed their spending, kept records, documented everything they said. Mr. Rodriguez is a hero. What he did, recognizing the abuse and taking action to document it, that's extraordinary. We need more community members like him. Detective O'Connor paused. Mrs. Bennett, I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., at the police station. Can you make that work? Yes. Excellent. Bring all your evidence, physical documents, the recordings, everything. I'll have a victim advocate there as well. Her name is Linda Martinez, and she specializes in supporting elderly victims of family financial abuse. She'll help you navigate the process and connect you with resources. Resources? Yes. There are funds available to help victims of elder abuse. Emergency financial assistance, temporary housing if needed, medical care, counseling. You don't have to do this alone, Mrs. Bennett. The kindness in her voice broke something inside me. I started crying, not the wrenching sobs from earlier, but quiet tears that ran down my cheeks like rain. Thank you, I whispered. No, Mrs. Bennett. Thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to come forward. Thank you for documenting everything, and thank you for being willing to prosecute. Because cases like yours, they set precedents. They send a message that elder abuse won't be tolerated. You're not just saving yourself. You're potentially saving countless other victims. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my studio apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. Tiny, fragile, barely there, but hope nonetheless. The night deepened. I should have turned on lights, but I didn't. I sat in the darkness, Richard's ring on my finger, my evidence folder on my lap, and thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. I thought about Richard dying while Ruth circled like a vulture. I thought about 8-year-old Jessica sobbing at her father's funeral, already being studied and evaluated and targeted. I thought about the years of lies and manipulation, the manufactured crises, the tears and pleas, and carefully crafted deceptions. And I thought about tomorrow, about walking into that police station and filing formal charges, about the moment when Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus would be served with arrest warrants, about watching their perfect facade crack and crumble. They'd taken everything from me, my money, my dignity, my daughter's integrity, my husband's memory, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd left me alive, and alive, I was dangerous. At midnight, I finally stood up and turned on the lights. I made myself eat something, a can of soup, heated on my hot plate. It tasted like nothing, but I forced it down because I needed strength for what was coming. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I took a proper shower, washed my hair, laid out my best clothes for tomorrow. The navy cardigan Jessica had given me 3 Christmases ago felt like armor now. I would wear it into battle. Before bed, I opened my laptop one more time and wrote an email to my sister Diana in Chicago. I told her everything, the whole sordid story from beginning to end. I attached the spreadsheet showing the $174,000 impact. I included copies of the key evidence. And I wrote, Diana, I'm finally fighting back. Tomorrow I file criminal charges. I wanted you to know in case something happens to me. If Ruth and her family decide I'm too dangerous to let live, if I have an accident or a sudden health crisis, you'll know it wasn't natural. You'll know to push for an investigation. I love you. I'm sorry I wasted so many years being a victim, but I'm a victim no more. Margaret. I hit send at 12:43 a.m. Then I took my phone and recorded one final message, a video this time. I sat in my worn chair, Richard's ring visible on my finger, and spoke directly to the camera. My name is Margaret Louise Bennett. I'm 74 years old. If you're watching this, something has happened to me. What you need to know is that I've been systematically defrauded by my daughter-in-law's family, Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus Patterson. They've stolen at least $67,000 from me directly, with a total impact exceeding $174,000 when you include what their theft forced me to sacrifice. I have evidence of a conspiracy dating back 22 years, to when Ruth Patterson was my late husband's nurse and exploited him during his dying days. I have recordings of Ruth admitting to the entire scheme. I have my daughter Jessica's confession of her participation and her agreement to testify. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing criminal charges with the Phoenix Police Department. If something happens to me before those charges are filed, if I die suddenly or have a convenient accident, please know it wasn't natural. Please know that Ruth Patterson has already threatened me, has already tried to have me declared mentally incompetent, has already demonstrated she will do anything to protect her scheme. I'm not paranoid. I'm not confused. I'm not mentally declining. I'm a woman who finally discovered the truth and decided to fight back. And if that makes me a threat that needs to be eliminated, then so be it. But at least the truth will survive me. This recording, along with all my evidence, has been sent to my attorney David Weber, to Detective Sarah O'Connor of Phoenix PD, to my sister Diana in Chicago, and has been uploaded to 3 separate cloud storage services. The truth cannot be erased. Justice cannot be stopped. Ruth Patterson, if you're watching this, you lose. Even if you kill me, you lose. The evidence survives, the testimony survives, and the world will know exactly what you are. A predator, a thief, a monster who feeds on the dying and their families. To everyone else watching this, don't let your elderly loved ones suffer in silence. Pay attention, ask questions, look for the signs, and if you suspect abuse, speak up. Be like Carlos Rodriguez, the grocery store cashier who saved my life by having the courage to tell me the truth. My name is Margaret Louise Bennett. I'm 74 years old, and I refuse to die a victim. I uploaded the video to YouTube as unlisted, sent the link to 5 different people, and finally allowed myself to sleep. If tomorrow never came, at least the truth would survive me. But tomorrow did come, and with it, the beginning of the end for Ruth Patterson's reign of terror. I woke at 6 a.m. to my ancient alarm clock's piercing beep, my body stiff from a night of fitful sleep punctuated by nightmares where Ruth's face morphed into Richard's, both of them laughing at me while counting my money. The morning routine was mechanical instant coffee, a piece of toast with the last of the peanut butter, a shower in water that never quite got hot enough. I dressed in my navy cardigan and best slacks, applied makeup with a hand that only trembled slightly, and gathered my evidence folder. At 7:45, my phone rang. Gilbert's name flashed on the screen. My first instinct was to ignore it. Mr. Weber had told me not to engage with them until after we'd filed charges. But something made me answer. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the desire to hear what new lies they'd concoct. Maybe just the muscle memory of 4 years of always answering when they called. Hello? Margaret. Gilbert's voice was strained, artificially warm, like he was trying too hard to sound normal. Thank God you answered. We need to talk. I'm busy, Gilbert. I have an appointment this morning. This can't wait. It's about Ruth. Margaret, she's in the hospital. My stomach clenched despite myself. What happened? She collapsed last night. Severe chest pain, trouble breathing. The doctors think it might be her heart, possibly a major cardiac event. They're running tests now, but his voice broke convincingly. Margaret, they're talking about emergency surgery, triple bypass, and our insurance. There's a gap. A significant gap. Of course there was. How much? The question came out flat, mechanical. The surgery and recovery costs will be about $50,000 total. Insurance covers most of it, but we're short $3,200 for the deductible and co-pays. Without it, they can't schedule the surgery until next week, and the doctors say waiting could be fatal. Her heart is that unstable. $3,200. Not the $50,000 Ruth had mentioned at dinner. They were scaling back, testing whether I'd pay a smaller amount after our confrontation. Or maybe they genuinely didn't know I'd already discovered everything and thought one more emergency would work. I see, I said carefully. Margaret, I know things were tense at dinner. I know you're upset about the money we've borrowed. But this is life or death. This is Ruth's life. Whatever anger you're feeling toward us, please don't let it cost Ruth her life. If this moment truly hit home for you, don't forget to tap that like button. It tells me you're right here with me. Can you see a bit of yourself in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what part spoke to you most. The manipulation was textbook. Make it about life and death. Frame any refusal as murder. Turn the victim's legitimate anger into a weapon against them. When do you need the money? Today. By noon. They want to schedule the surgery for tomorrow morning, but they need payment confirmation first. Which hospital? A pause. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Banner Good Samaritan, Gilbert said. Emergency cardiac unit. She's in room 437. Banner Good Samaritan, the same hospital where Ruth had worked, where she'd exploited dying patients, where she'd stolen my husband's final moments. The audacity was breathtaking. "I'll call you back," I said. "Margaret, wait, there's no time. The doctors need an answer by 9 a.m. or they'll push her surgery to next week. Please, I'm begging you. $3,200. That's all we need. You can save her life." I said I'll call you back. I hung up before he could protest further. My hands were shaking not with fear or guilt, but with rage so pure it felt like lightning in my veins. They thought I was still that desperate, frightened woman who'd believe any crisis they manufactured. They thought one more emergency, one more life or death plea, would open my wallet again. They were wrong. I called Mr. Weber immediately. "Mrs. Bennett, are you all right? You sound upset." Gilbert just called. "Claims Ruth is in Banner Good Samaritan with heart problems, needs emergency surgery. They're short $3,200, and if I don't pay by noon, she might die." Silence, then. "They have brass balls, I'll give them that. Did he say which room?" "Room 437. Emergency cardiac unit." More typing sounds. "Mrs. Bennett, I have a contact at Banner Good Samaritan, an administrator I've worked with on other cases. Give me 10 minutes. Don't respond to Gilbert until I call you back." Those 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. I paced my tiny apartment, Richard's ring catching the morning light, the evidence folder sitting on my kitchen table like an indictment waiting to be delivered. When Mr. Weber called back, his voice was tight with anger. "There is no patient named Ruth Patterson currently admitted to Banner Good Samaritan. There is no room 437 in their emergency cardiac unit. That floor only goes up to 420. And their records show no one by that name has been admitted in the past 6 months." The lie was so complete, so elaborate, that I actually felt dizzy. They made it all up. Every word. This wasn't even a sophisticated lie. They didn't check basic details like room numbers or whether they could verify the story. They were counting on you being too panicked to fact-check, too guilt-ridden to question. What do I do? Nothing. You let them panic. You let them wonder why you're not calling back, why you're not rushing to send money. Let them show their hand. But I had a better idea. "Mr. Weber, what if I told them I was coming to the hospital? What if I said I wanted to see Ruth before her surgery, that I was bringing the money in person?" He was quiet for a moment. "That's actually brilliant. They'd have to either admit she's not there or fabricate some excuse for why you can't visit. Either way, they'd expose themselves. Should I record the call? Absolutely. Arizona is one-party consent. You can record any conversation you're part of." I opened my voice memo app, pressed record, then called Gilbert back. He answered on the first ring. "Margaret, thank God. Did you?" "I'm coming to the hospital," I interrupted. "I have the money in cash, but I want to see Ruth first. I want to tell her myself that I'm helping, that I'm there for her." The pause was longer this time. I could almost hear his brain scrambling. "Margaret, that's so kind of you, but Ruth is sedated right now, the pre-surgery medications, you know. She wouldn't even know you were there. Then I'll wait until she wakes up. Or I'll just sit with her. Gilbert, she might die on the operating table tomorrow. If those are her last hours, I want to spend them with her. Family should be together at times like these." Of course. Gilbert's voice had taken on a desperate quality, but the thing is, they're very strict about visitors in cardiac ICU, only immediate family. Even Marcus and I can only visit during specific hours. I'm her daughter-in-law's mother. That makes me family. Yes, but the hospital doesn't see it that way. Their rules are very strict. Then I'll bring the money to you directly. Where are you now? I assume you're at the hospital with Ruth? Another pause, longer and more panicked. I'm actually at home right now. I had to come back to get some of Ruth's things, her medications, her insurance cards. I'm heading back to the hospital at 10. Perfect. I'll meet you there at 10. We can go in together, and you can bring me to Ruth's room. Then I'll give you the cash. Margaret, that's really not necessary. If you just wire the money to our account, I can handle... No. My voice was steel. If I'm paying $3,200 for Ruth's life-saving surgery, I want to see her. I want to look her in the eye and tell her that despite everything, despite our differences, I'm there for her when it matters most. I could hear Gilbert breathing on the other end, could almost see him scrambling to figure out how to maintain the lie. "You know what?" he said finally. "The doctors just came in. Ruth's condition has stabilized. They're saying they can wait until next week for the surgery after all, so there's no emergency. You don't need to come down, and we don't need the money right away. But you just said waiting could be fatal." That was the preliminary diagnosis. But the new tests show she's more stable than they thought. It's still serious, but not immediately life-threatening. So she doesn't need surgery? She does, but it can wait. Give us a few days to work with insurance, see if we can get better coverage. Gilbert. I let all the coldness I felt seep into my voice. Is Ruth actually in the hospital right now? Silence. Because I'm going to hang up this phone and call Banner Good Samaritan directly. I'm going to ask for Ruth Patterson in room 437 of the emergency cardiac unit. And if she's not there, if you've been lying to me about your wife having a life-threatening heart condition, I'm going to take that as the final proof. I need that everything you've told me for 4 years has been a lie. More silence. Then, quietly, "Margaret, you don't understand. We really need that money. Not for surgery, but we need it. The rent is actually overdue this time. 3 months overdue. If we don't pay by Friday, we'll be evicted. We'll lose the house. Everything we've worked for." "You mean everything I paid for?" "We'll pay you back. I swear to God, we'll pay back every penny. Just this one more time. $3,200. That's all we need." "No. Margaret, please. No." "And Gilbert, don't call me again. Don't text me. Don't come to my apartment. If you or Ruth or Marcus contact me again, I'm calling the police." "You're making a mistake. We're family. You can't just abandon family. You're not my family. You're thieves who manipulated my daughter into betraying me." And I'm done. I ended the call and sat there shaking, the phone in my hand still recording, capturing Gilbert's desperate lies and my final refusal. 4 years. For 4 years, I'd answered every call like this with sympathy and an open wallet. 4 years of manufactured emergencies and lies and manipulation. But today, for the first time, I'd said no, and it felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. My phone immediately started ringing again. Gilbert, then Ruth's number, then Marcus, then Jessica. I blocked all of them. At 8:45, I gathered my evidence folder, put on my coat, and walked out of my apartment building into the October morning. The sun was bright and warm, the sky that particular shade of Arizona blue that Richard had always loved. "I'm doing this for both of us," I whispered, touching his ring on my finger, "for all the families she destroyed, for all the victims who never got justice." I drove my elderly Honda Civic to the Phoenix Police Department headquarters on Washington Street. Detective Sarah O'Connor was waiting for me in the lobby. She was a woman in her early 50s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Bennett, thank you for coming. I know this must be incredibly difficult." "Detective," I said, "difficult was the last 4 years. Today is liberation." She smiled. "Then let's get started. We have a lot of charges to file." As we walked toward the interview rooms, my phone buzzed one more time. A voicemail from Gilbert, his voice desperate and angry. "You're going to regret this, Margaret. Ruth has friends, connections. She'll make sure everyone knows what a bitter, vindictive old woman you are. She'll destroy your reputation, turn Jessica against you completely. You think you're winning, but you're signing your own death warrant. No one crosses Ruth Patterson and gets away with it." I saved the voicemail and handed my phone to Detective O'Connor. "Add terroristic threats to the charges," I said calmly, "and I think we'll need that protective order expedited." "Already on it," she replied. And behind closed doors, with a victim advocate beside me and a recording device running, I told my story from beginning to end. The war had officially begun, and this time, I was going to win. The interview room at Phoenix Police Department was smaller than I'd imagined from television shows, maybe 10 feet by 12, with beige walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, and chairs that had seen better decades. A camera mounted in the corner blinked red, recording everything. Detective Sarah O'Connor sat across from me, a legal pad in front of her covered in neat handwriting. Beside me sat Linda Martinez, the victim advocate, a woman in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that had clearly seen too many stories like mine. "Mrs. Bennett," Detective O'Connor began, "I want you to know that everything you say here today is being recorded for legal purposes." This statement may be used in criminal proceedings against Ruth Patterson, Gilbert Patterson, Marcus Patterson, and potentially Jessica Bennett. Do you understand? I understand. And you're giving this statement voluntarily? No one has coerced or threatened you? I'm giving it voluntarily. In fact, I've been waiting 4 years to give it. Linda Martinez reached over and squeezed my hand gently. Take your time, Mrs. Bennett. We have all day if we need it. Start wherever you feel comfortable. I took a breath and began with Richard. With his diagnosis in July 2003, his admission to Banner Good Samaritan, the 6 weeks of watching him die while trying to keep our 8-year-old daughter's life from falling apart. Detective O'Connor took notes as I spoke, occasionally stopping me to clarify dates or details. And you never met the night caregiver during your husband's hospitalization? Never. I was there during the day, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. most days, when I had to leave to pick up Jessica from school. The night nurse came at 6 p.m. and stayed until midnight. Our paths never crossed. But you were told her name was Sarah? Yes. The nurses said, Sarah is wonderful with him. Sarah makes him comfortable. Sarah sits with him for hours. I felt my throat tighten. They made it sound like a kindness. Like she was going above and beyond her duties. I didn't know she was exploiting him. And when did you first become aware that Sarah was actually Ruth Patterson? 2 days ago. When I did a Google search after a cashier at Walmart told me he'd heard Ruth mention Richard's name, I pulled out my evidence folder. I have the employment record from Banner Good Samaritan showing that Sarah R. Patterson worked there from June 2001 to October 2004. Detective O'Connor examined the document. This is the disciplinary record? Yes. Showing she was terminated for inappropriate conduct with patients, accepting gifts from vulnerable adults, and encouraging estate changes. There were 3 formal complaints from families before she was fired. And your husband gave her his wedding ring during this time? I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Linda Martinez handed me a tissue. I found the ring 2 nights ago, I said when I could. In Ruth's bedroom. Hidden in a locked drawer. Along with my ring, the one that should have been buried with Richard but somehow ended up in her possession. Mrs. Bennett, I need to ask you directly, how did you obtain these rings? This was the moment Mr. Weber had warned me about, the moment where I had to admit to trespassing and theft. I broke into Ruth Patterson's house through a bathroom window. I went to her bedroom, forced open a locked drawer, and took the rings. I also recorded a conversation with Ruth in which she admitted keeping the rings for 22 years and threatened to use them to manipulate my daughter. Detective O'Connor's expression didn't change. You understand that breaking and entering is a crime? Yes. And that the Pattersons could potentially press charges against you? Yes. But those rings are mine. They're evidence of Ruth's pattern of exploitation. And I'd rather face charges for taking back what was stolen from me than let her keep trophies of her crimes. Detective O'Connor made a note. For the record, I'm not here to investigate your actions, Mrs. Bennett. I'm here to investigate the Pattersons. But a defense attorney will absolutely bring up the circumstances of how you obtained the rings. Let them. I have recordings of Ruth admitting she had them. I have Instagram posts from July 2003 showing her displaying my husband's ring as a gift from a patient. I have documentation proving she's done this to multiple families. One questionable entry into her house doesn't negate 22 years of documented fraud. Agreed. Now, let's talk about when Ruth's son Marcus entered the picture. I told her about Marcus and Jessica meeting in 2014 at a teaching conference in Tucson, about their whirlwind 6-month courtship and engagement, about the wedding I'd helped pay for $5,000 I'd taken from my retirement account. And you didn't know at the time that Ruth had been your husband's nurse? No, she never mentioned it. When I met her at the wedding, she introduced herself as a former healthcare worker who'd left the field. She never said where she'd worked or that she'd known Richard. I had no idea until 2 days ago. So the connection between Ruth Patterson and your late husband wasn't disclosed during the entire courtship and marriage planning? Never. Which means it was deliberately hidden. If it had been innocent if she'd just happened to be his nurse and years later her son happened to meet my daughter, why wouldn't she mention it? Why hide it unless the connection was part of the plan? Detective O'Connor nodded. That's a strong point for establishing intent and premeditation. Now, let's talk about the financial exploitation. When did the request for money begin? I walked her through it chronologically. 6 months after the wedding, the first request for $1,500 for rent. Then the pattern every few weeks, a new emergency, a new crisis, always calibrated to be just believable enough, just urgent enough, just small enough that I'd say yes. And you kept records of all the transfers? Every single one. I pulled out my bank statements, highlighted in yellow. I have 48 months of documentation. $67,100 in direct transfers, gifts, and loans that were never repaid. Linda Martinez gasped audibly. 67,000? Mrs. Bennett, that's catastrophic for someone on a fixed income. It destroyed me financially, I said simply. I went from a comfortable retirement to poverty. I can show you the trajectory. I pulled out my spreadsheet. This shows my account balances over 4 years. You can see the steady decline correlating exactly with the timing of their requests. Detective O'Connor studied the spreadsheet, her jaw tightening. This is one of the clearest cases of financial exploitation I've ever seen. The documentation is extraordinary. I had help. Carlos Rodriguez, the cashier at Walmart on Camelback Road. He witnessed their spending, kept receipts, documented conversations. He recognized what was happening and took action. We'll need to interview Mr. Rodriguez. His testimony will be crucial. Detective O'Connor made another note. Now, Mrs. Bennett, I need you to walk me through the evidence of their actual financial situation versus what they claimed. This was the part I'd been preparing for. I pulled out the Instagram printouts, organized chronologically. Detective O'Connor's eyes widened as she flipped through them. This is Ruth Patterson's public Instagram account? Yes. Username @Ruth Patterson, lifestyle. She documented her entire luxury lifestyle publicly while claiming poverty to me. The detective examined each photo, the Louis Vuitton bag, the Cadillac Escalade, the spa days, the expensive dinners, the home renovations. With each image, her expression grew harder. This is prosecutorial gold, she said. Defense attorneys try to argue that elder abuse victims are confused or misremembering. But social media posts with timestamps and geotags? That's objective evidence that can't be disputed. There's more. I pulled out Carlos's receipts, 37 of them, spanning 2 months, totaling $22,600. These are all from the same Whole Foods location? Yes, Carlos works at the adjacent Walmart. He watched them come in week after week, spending hundreds of dollars on luxury groceries while I was asking them if they had enough to eat. Detective O'Connor spread the receipts across the table like a game of solitaire. Mrs. Bennett, when we combine your bank statements showing money going out with these receipts showing where it went, that's a closed loop. We can prove beyond reasonable doubt that they took your money and spent it on luxury items while claiming poverty. What about the recording, I asked? The one where Ruth admits the whole thing? That's more complicated legally because of how it was obtained. But even if we can't use it in criminal court, it's absolutely usable in civil proceedings to recover your money. And more importantly, Ruth doesn't know whether we can use it or not. That uncertainty is leverage. For the next 3 hours, I walked Detective O'Connor through every piece of evidence. The disciplinary record from Banner, the LinkedIn profile showing Ruth's employment history, the medical records request I'd filed showing Richard had given gifts to his caregiver, Jessica's confession recorded by Mr. Weber, the voicemail from Gilbert threatening me. By the time we finished, the detective had filled 20 pages of notes. Mrs. Bennett, based on what you've shown me today, I'm recommending the following charges against Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus Patterson. Multiple counts of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult Class 2 felonies, each carrying 2 to 12.5 years. Conspiracy to commit fraud, a Class 3 felony, 3 to 8.5 years. Theft by extortion, Class 2 felony. Fraudulent schemes and artifices, Class 2 felony. And based on Gilbert's voicemail, threatening and intimidating, a Class 1 misdemeanor that could be enhanced to a felony given the context. She looked up at me. If convicted on all counts and if sentences run consecutively rather than concurrently, we're looking at potentially 30 to 45 years total prison time. The number should have satisfied me. It didn't. No amount of prison time would give me back 4 years of my life, or untaint Richard's memory, or undo Jessica's betrayal. But it would stop them from doing this to anyone else. What about Jessica? I asked. My daughter. Based on her cooperation agreement with your attorney, the district attorney will likely offer immunity in exchange for testimony. She'll have to repay the money she personally received, but she won't face criminal charges if she testifies truthfully. And if she doesn't testify? If she backs out? Then she faces the same charges as the others. Mrs. Bennet, I'll be honest, your daughter made choices. Yes, she was groomed and manipulated, but she was also an adult who lied to you repeatedly. The DA will want her testimony, but if she refuses to cooperate, she'll be held accountable. Linda Martinez, who'd been quiet for most of the interview, finally spoke. Margaret, how are you doing? This has been an intense 3 hours. Do you need a break? I realized I was exhausted. My back ached from the hard chair. My throat was raw from talking. My hands were shaking from adrenaline crash. I'm okay, I said. I just want to finish this. We are finished, Detective O'Connor said. You've given us everything we need to move forward. The next step is for me to present this evidence to the district attorney. Based on the strength of your case, I expect arrest warrants will be issued within 48 hours. That fast? Mrs. Bennet, most elder abuse cases take months to build because victims don't report until it's too late and evidence is gone. You've handed us a complete case with documentation, recordings, witness testimony, and a cooperating co-conspirator. This is as strong as these cases get. What do I do now? Now? You go home. You rest. You let us handle the legal process. The protective order should be approved by end of day today, which means the Pattersons will be legally barred from contacting you. If they violate it, call 911 immediately. And then you start rebuilding your life. Linda will connect you with victim services, financial assistance, counseling, support groups. You're not alone in this anymore, Mrs. Bennet. I stood up on shaky legs. Linda Martinez steadied me with a gentle hand on my elbow. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for believing me. Mrs. Bennet, Detective O'Connor said, in 15 years of working financial crimes, I've learned that the victims who survive are the ones who fight back. You're a fighter. Don't forget that. As I walked out of the police station into the afternoon sun, I felt lighter than I had in years. The evidence folder was no longer in my possession. It was now part of an official criminal investigation. My story was no longer just mine. It belonged to justice now. And Ruth Patterson's reign of terror was about to end. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Weber. Protective order approved. Patterson family has been served. They cannot contact you under penalty of arrest. You're safe now, Mrs. Bennet. Rest. Tomorrow, we start recovery proceedings. I drove home to my shabby studio apartment, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in my worn chair. Richard's ring gleamed on my finger. We did it, I whispered to him. Wherever he was, we're finally getting justice. And for the first time in 22 years, I felt like he could rest in peace. Because the woman who'd exploited his dying moments was finally going to pay. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ruth's face in that perfume-soaked bedroom, heard her voice admitting she'd kept Richard's ring for 22 years like a trophy, felt the weight of betrayal settling into my bones like arthritis. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. According to the protective order, she was still allowed to contact me until the cooperation agreement was finalized. After that, any communication would have to go through lawyers. I answered. Mom. Her voice was thick with tears, raw from crying. Mom, they served us with papers last night. Protective orders, criminal investigation notices. Marcus is. He's falling apart. He's saying things that don't make sense. His parents won't answer his calls. Mom, what's happening? Justice is happening. The papers say charges including conspiracy, fraud, exploitation of vulnerable adults. They're saying Marcus could go to prison for 30 years. 30 years, Mom. Yes. You really did it. You really went to the police. She sounded shocked, as if some part of her had believed I'd back down at the last moment, choose family over justice. I told you I would. I know, but I thought maybe we could work this out privately. As a family. I thought maybe you'd give us a chance to make it right before involving the law. Jessica, you had 4 years to make it right. 4 years to stop lying, to tell me the truth. To choose me over them. You made your choice every single day for 48 months. Don't pretend you deserve another chance now that consequences have arrived. Silence. Then, "You're right. You're completely right. Mom, I need to see you. There are things I need to tell you. Things about Ruth and Gilbert that I didn't say yesterday. Things that are worse than you know." My stomach clenched. Worse than a 22-year conspiracy to defraud me? Yes, much worse. Please, Mom. Can I come over? Just for an hour. I need you to understand what I've been living with. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Mr. Weber had said to minimize contact with Jessica until the cooperation agreement was signed, but she was still my daughter. And if she had more information that could strengthen the case against the Pattersons, I needed to hear it. 1 hour, I said, 9 a.m. And Jessica, if you're recording this conversation to give to Ruth, if you're trying to gather evidence to use against me, I'll know. And I'll make sure the DA knows you violated the cooperation agreement. I'm not recording anything. I swear on Dad's grave. I just need to talk to you. She arrived at 8:57 a.m., 3 minutes early, looking like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were swollen nearly shut from crying, her hair unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "Thank you for seeing me," she said as she entered my studio apartment. We sat in our same positions from yesterday, her on the sofa, me in the chair across from her, an ocean of betrayal between us. "What do you need to tell me?" Jessica took a shuddering breath. Last night, after the protective orders were served, Marcus completely broke down. He was drinking a whole bottle of whiskey, and he started talking, confessing things. And Mom, what he told me, it made me realize I was never his wife. I was his assignment. "I already know that, Jessica." Ruth admitted it in the recording. "There's a recording?" Jessica's head snapped up. "Of Ruth admitting they targeted me?" I pulled out my phone and played the relevant section. Ruth's voice filled my tiny apartment. "Jessica is mine, Gilbert. Margaret's own daughter is mine. She married Marcus because I told her to. She asks her mother for money when I tell her to. It was a 7-year plan, Gilbert. From Richard's death to Marcus meeting Jessica." Jessica's face went gray. She listened to the entire 6-minute recording without moving, barely breathing. When it ended, she looked at me with eyes full of horror. She said it out loud. She actually said, "I'm hers." Jessica's voice was barely a whisper, like I'm property, like I'm a tool. "You are to her. You always have been." "Mom, there's more. Marcus told me last night that Ruth has done this before. Not just with Dad, she's done this with 6 other families over 30 years. 6 families, Mom. All the same pattern. Befriend a dying patient. Learn everything about their family and finances. Position herself or her sons." "Wait, sons? Plural?" Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus has an older half-brother, Daniel, from Ruth's first marriage. He lives in California now, and Marcus barely talks about him. But last night, Marcus said Daniel was part of an earlier scheme. Back in the 90s, Daniel married a woman whose father was terminally ill. They drained the family's money, then Daniel divorced her and disappeared. Ruth got a cut of everything. My blood ran cold. Ruth has done this before with another son? Yes. Daniel was the practice run, the experiment. And when it worked, when they successfully stole from that family and got away with it, Ruth decided to do it again, but better this time, more carefully, with Marcus. Does Daniel still do this? Is he targeting another family right now? Marcus doesn't know. They don't talk. But Mom, that's not the worst part. Jessica's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. Marcus said Ruth chose me specifically not just because of your money, but because of Dad. Because she'd been obsessed with Dad since he died. She kept not just his ring, but other things. A photo, a lock of his hair that she cut while he was dying. She has a whole box of keepsakes from him hidden in her closet. I felt my stomach heave. A lock of Richard's hair? Marcus saw it once when he was looking for something in her room. He said she keeps it in a locket, wears it sometimes, like Dad was some kind of trophy from the greatest con of her career. The room spun. Ruth hadn't just exploited Richard, she'd been obsessed with him, obsessed enough to keep his hair, obsessed enough to target his daughter 2 decades later. "There's something else," Jessica continued. "Ruth told Marcus that she wanted to completely replace you in our family. She wanted me to eventually cut you off entirely, maybe even have you declared incompetent and institutionalized so that she could be the only grandmother when we had kids. She wanted to erase you completely and take your place. Jesus Christ. She said you'd gotten in the way of her relationship with Dad. That you'd been the obstacle between them. That you didn't deserve him and you didn't deserve me. She wanted to punish you by taking your daughter and your future grandchildren. This went beyond financial fraud. This was psychological warfare. This was a vendetta spanning 22 years, motivated not just by greed but by some twisted obsession with my dead husband. Why is Marcus telling you this now? I asked. Why confess after all these years of lying? Because he's terrified, Mom. The protective order says he's facing 30 years minimum. His parents aren't answering his calls. His lawyer told him the evidence against them is overwhelming. And he realizes that Ruth used him just like she used me. He's not her son, he's her tool. And now that the tool is about to go to prison, she's discarding him. He wants a deal. Yes. He wants to testify against his parents in exchange for a reduced sentence. He knows things offshore accounts where they've hidden money, other families they've scammed, Ruth's whole operation. He's willing to give prosecutors everything. This changed things. If Marcus was willing to flip on Ruth and Gilbert, if he could provide evidence of additional crimes and victims, the case became even stronger. Does Mr. Weber know about this? Not yet. Marcus wanted me to talk to you first. He's ashamed, Mom. He knows what he did to you, to me, to our marriage. He knows he doesn't deserve mercy. But he wants to at least try to make some of it right by helping to put Ruth away forever. I studied my daughter's face, looking for signs of manipulation or lies. But all I saw was exhaustion and shame and genuine horror at what she'd learned. Jessica, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth. When you married Marcus, did you love him, or was it always about following Ruth's instructions? She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and broken. I thought I loved him, but now I don't know if those feelings were real or if Ruth manufactured them. She'd tell me things like, Marcus is perfect for you, and you two are soulmates, and this is the family you've always wanted. And I believed her because I wanted it to be true so badly. But was it love? Or was it just really good manipulation? I don't know, baby. I honestly don't know. Neither do I. And that's the scariest part, not knowing if my own feelings were real. We sat in silence for a moment, two women who'd both been victims of the same predator, separated by the choices we'd made in response. What do you want me to do? I asked finally. Tell Mr. Weber that Marcus wants to cooperate, fully, completely. He'll testify against his parents, provide evidence of other victims, give access to financial records, whatever it takes. In exchange, he's hoping for, I don't know, maybe 15 years instead of 30? A chance to eventually have some kind of life after prison? And what about you? Do you still love him after learning all of this? Jessica looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I don't know, Mom. Yesterday I thought he was my husband who'd made terrible choices. Today I found out I was his job assignment. How do you love someone when you're not sure your entire relationship was a lie? You don't, I said quietly. You grieve what you thought you had, and you move forward. Is that what you're doing? Grieving what you thought you had with me? The question hit hard. Was I grieving my daughter? Yes. But was she dead? No. She was sitting right here, broken and ashamed and maybe, finally, honest. I'm grieving the daughter I thought I raised, I said. The one who wouldn't lie to her mother for 4 years. But Jessica, you're still here. You can still choose to be someone different going forward. That's more than I can say for Richard. He's gone, and I'll never know what parts of our marriage were real and what parts were tainted by Ruth's manipulation. Do you think Dad really loved her? No. I think Dad was dying and confused and exploited by a predatory nurse. I think Ruth took advantage of his vulnerability and then spent 2 decades obsessing over him. But love? No. That wasn't love. Jessica nodded slowly. I'll tell Marcus to contact Mr. Weber directly. I'll give him your lawyer's information. And Mom? Yes? I know you might never forgive me. I know I destroyed your trust and your financial security and your peace of mind. But I want you to know I'm going to testify against them. All of them. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of being your daughter again. That's a start, I said. But Jessica, it's only a start. Words are easy, actions are what matter. And it's going to take years of right actions before I can even begin to trust you again. I understand. And Mom? I love you. I know those words don't mean much right now, but I need you to know even when I was lying to you, even when I was taking your money, even when I was betraying you, I loved you. I'm just sorry I forgot how to show it. After Jessica left, I called Mr. Weber and told him everything. About Marcus's willingness to cooperate, about the half-brother in California, about the other victims, about Ruth's obsession with Richard. This just became a RICO case, Mr. Weber said, barely able to contain his excitement. Racketeering influenced and corrupt organizations. If we can prove Ruth has been running an organized criminal enterprise for 30 years, targeting multiple families, using multiple family members as participants, Mrs. Bennett, she could get life in prison. Actual life, no possibility of parole. Good, I said. Let her die in a cell. Let her spend her final years in a place where she can't hurt anyone else. I'll contact Marcus's attorney and set up a proffer session. If his information checks out, the DA will definitely offer a deal. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and thought about Ruth keeping a lock of Richard's hair in a locket, wearing my dead husband's hair like a love token. The woman wasn't just a criminal. She was disturbed, obsessed, dangerous. And she'd been in my family's life for 22 years. But not anymore. Now, she was going to prison. And I was going to make sure she never got out. The call came at 6:43 a.m. on a Thursday morning, 3 days after I'd filed my police report. Detective Sarah O'Connor's voice was crisp and professional, but I could hear satisfaction underneath. Mrs. Bennett, I wanted you to know before you see it on the news. We executed arrest warrants this morning at 5 a.m. Ruth, Gilbert, and Marcus Patterson are all in custody. My hand tightened on the phone. They arrested them? All three, simultaneously. SWAT teams at each location to prevent destruction of evidence or flight. Ruth and Gilbert at their Arcadia home, Marcus at his rental in Chandler. They're being processed now and will be arraigned this afternoon. What are the charges? Ruth Patterson, 14 counts of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, conspiracy to commit fraud, theft by extortion, fraudulent schemes, and engaging in a pattern of racketeering activity. That last one is the big one. It's a RICO charge based on evidence of her 30-year criminal enterprise. 30 years. They'd found proof of her other victims. Gilbert Patterson, 12 counts as an accessory and co-conspirator. Marcus Patterson, 8 counts, with possibility of reduction based on his cooperation agreement. Are they going to get bail? The DA is arguing for no bail based on flight risk and danger to witnesses, specifically you. Ruth has offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that we discovered through Marcus's information. She has the means and motive to flee. Gilbert has a valid passport and family in Canada. We're going to push hard for them to remain in custody until trial. And if the judge grants bail anyway, then the protective order remains in force, and they'll be fitted with GPS monitoring anklets. Any violation coming within 300 feet of you, attempting contact, leaving Maricopa County results in immediate rearrest. I should have felt relief. Victory even, but all I felt was exhaustion. Mrs. Bennett, there's something else. During the arrest, Ruth made some statements. Threats, actually, against you. We have them on body camera footage, and the DA is adding witness intimidation charges. But I wanted you to be aware Ruth Patterson is extremely angry, and angry people sometimes do dangerous things, even from jail. What did she say? Detective O'Connor hesitated. Are you sure you want to know? Tell me. When the officers placed her in handcuffs, she started screaming about you. She said, and I quote, "That bitch will pay for this. She'll regret the day she ever crossed me. I'll destroy her from inside this cell. I'll make sure everyone knows what she really is, a jealous old hag who drove her husband into my arms and then got bitter when I was better than her." The words should have hurt. They didn't. They just confirmed what I already knew. Ruth was delusional, obsessed, and dangerous. Then the officers got her to the patrol car. Detective O'Connor continued, and she started yelling loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "Margaret Bennett is a liar. She seduced her way into my Richard's life and ruined everything. I was supposed to be with him. I was supposed to have his life. She stole it from me. Mrs. Bennett, she's clearly not mentally stable." Richard and I met in 1972, I said quietly. We married in 73, 8 years before Ruth even graduated nursing school. She never should have been with him. She met him when he was dying 30 years into our marriage. Her delusion has been festering for over 2 decades. We're documenting all of this. Her statements during arrest actually help our case. They show motive, obsession, and a delusional belief system that drove the conspiracy. A jury will see her for what she is. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment trying to process the reality. They were arrested. Actually arrested. Ruth, who'd seemed so untouchable in her expensive house with her perfume collection and her smug confidence, was sitting in a jail cell right now. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, it brought a bone-deep weariness. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. I just heard. They arrested Marcus. Mom, he's in jail. Actually in jail. I know he deserves it, but seeing him led away in handcuffs. I can't breathe. I didn't respond. What could I say? Your husband is a criminal who married you as part of a fraud scheme, and now he's facing the consequences of his choices. She already knew that. At 9 a.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw two women I didn't recognize. One was young, maybe 30, with a professional camera around her neck. The other was older, holding a microphone with a local news station logo. Press. Mrs. Bennett? The one with the microphone called out. I'm Stephanie Chen from Channel 12 News. We're covering the Patterson arrests. Can we ask you a few questions about your experience as their victim? No comment, I called through the door. Mrs. Bennett, the public deserves to know about elder abuse. Your story could help other victims come forward. I said no comment. Please leave. They didn't leave. I could hear them talking outside my door, probably filming my apartment building, gathering footage for their story. Within an hour, 3 more news crews had arrived. I called Mr. Weber. They're camped outside my apartment. TV news, reporters. How did they even find me? Court records are public. Your address is on the protective order filing. Mrs. Bennett, I'm sorry, but this is going to be a high-profile case. 30-year criminal conspiracy, RICO charges, a defendant who kept a deceased patient's hair as a trophy. This is tabloid gold. I don't want to be tabloid gold. I want to be left alone. I understand. But here's what I'm going to suggest. We issue a brief written statement through my office. Something carefully worded that acknowledges you're cooperating with law enforcement but can't comment on an ongoing investigation. That should satisfy the media enough that they'll leave you alone. Fine. Whatever makes them go away. By noon, the statement was released, and the news crews finally dispersed, but the damage was done. My face was now on the local news, my name attached to phrases like elderly victim and decades-long fraud scheme. My phone started ringing with numbers I didn't recognize. Former colleagues from my teaching days, distant relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly concerned and curious. I turned off my phone entirely. At 3 p.m., there was a soft knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Carlos Rodriguez, my hero from Walmart, holding a casserole dish. I opened the door. Mrs. Bennett, he said gently, I saw the news. I thought you might need a home-cooked meal and a friend. I started crying. This man, this near stranger who'd saved my life by having the courage to speak up, was showing me more kindness than my own daughter had in 4 years. Come in, I managed. We sat at my kitchen table. The casserole was chicken enchiladas, still warm. Carlos served me a plate while I tried to compose myself. The reporters came to Walmart too, he said. Asking about me. About what I witnessed. I told them the same thing I'll tell the court. I saw the Pattersons spending hundreds of dollars on luxury items while bragging about getting money from you. I saw you counting pennies to buy a simple cake. I knew something was very wrong. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. For noticing, for documenting, for caring about a stranger. You're not a stranger, Mrs. Bennett. You're a member of our community who was being hurt. That makes you my responsibility. He paused. My wife, Maria, and we'd like you to come to dinner at our house this Sunday. Just a small meal, nothing fancy. We have 3 kids, lots of noise, but we thought you might like to be around family. Real family, not the kind that uses you. The invitation broke something open in my chest. I'd like that very much. At 5 p.m., Mr. Weber called. The arraignment just finished. Ruth and Gilbert were denied bail. The judge agreed their flight risks with means to leave the country. They'll remain in custody until trial. And Marcus? Bail set at $50,000, which Jessica can't pay, So he's staying in custody too, at least until his cooperation agreement is finalized. If he provides substantial assistance to the prosecution, the judge might reconsider. How did they look? Ruth and Gilbert? Defeated. Especially Ruth. She tried to give a speech about how she's the real victim here, how you've orchestrated this whole thing out of jealousy over Richard. The judge cut her off and told her to save it for trial. She did not react well to being silenced. What did she do? Started screaming that you're a liar and a manipulator, that you've poisoned her son against her, that she's going to expose the truth about Richard's final days. The bailiff had to physically restrain her. It was unhinged. The prosecutor got it all on record. Her behavior in court actually strengthened our case that she's dangerous and obsessed. After Mr. Weber hung up, I sat in my apartment, eating Carlos's enchiladas and trying to process the reality of my new life. Ruth was in jail, Gilbert was in jail, Marcus was in jail. Jessica was cooperating with prosecutors. My name and face were all over the local news. And I was here, in my shabby studio apartment with the leaking ceiling, eating the first home-cooked meal someone had made for me in 4 years. The enchiladas were delicious. They tasted like kindness. My doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, I saw Jessica standing there, her face blotchy from crying, holding a manila envelope. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Mom, I need to give you this." She held out the envelope. "It's from Marcus. He wanted you to have it before his cooperation meeting with the DA tomorrow." I took the envelope.